So, last session of the Global Summit. You want me to do it in 5 minutes so you can go all to the pool? Okay, well, we will do the full presentation. You can leave whenever you want. So, modern full stack development. My name is Danny Wijnschenk. I'm sales engineer. So, in the keynote session, one of the bullets was keep it simple. And working with a full stack is, in fact, one of the ways to keep your development process simple. So, in fact, there are several stacks like that, like LAMP. In fact, the only real benefit of that stack is that it's free. But recently, also people are talking about the mean stack, other than a great word for a developer being a mean developer. It is that the whole stack is in fact using JavaScript. So the benefit is when you know JavaScript from the database to the front end, you know everything what you need to know. So what I'm going to demonstrate you now in this session is we can do the same thing with Caché. So just replace MongoDB with the Caché document store, and you have the same stack, only JavaScript. So I'm only going to do JavaScript in this session. So if you hate JavaScript, you can still go to the pool. Apparently not, so let's continue. Yeah, well, if I repeat it long enough, the problem is it's also recorded, so people that are watching the recording do not know what they have to do. But okay, let's continue. So one of the benefits is, I guess you are all using Caché a long time. You have a lot of developers. They all know Caché object script. And now maybe you want to hire new developers. You want to make some mobile apps. And hiring those new developers, well, it's a bit hard if you have to hire them. They know a lot of web technologies. They don't know necessarily a lot of our technology. So you have to train them. They will not be productive from the first day. So having this JavaScript stack, full stack in Caché means that if you want to hire somebody who's really good in web development, well, they can start from the first day and be productive. And you can still run on the same platform as you're running right now. So you can still merge all those applications and benefit from all the code that you already had and all the data. So it's a good situation to be in. So the architecture that I'm going to use is very simple. On the client side, I'm only going to use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, just static files. I'm going to do, for the communication, I'm going to use REST, and the backend, I'm going to use Caché and the document store. And in the document store, I will store just the JSON that I want, and it will, well, I just do REST queries, and it will return JSON. So that's pretty simple. And I'm not going to spend any time in Caché. So the goal is, well, I have already installed it, but if you're going to try that, you can just install Caché, that's it. You don't need to do any tuning in Caché to get you going. That means that if you have a new developer, they don't have to bother about, oh yeah, I need to do this and this in Caché to get it working. No, it just works. One of the big advantages of our document data model is it's schemaless. That means, well, like I said, you don't have to set up anything. You don't have to create something. You don't have to say, oh, I'm going to expect these tables with these properties. No, it can just accept any document. It will just store it, and when you want it back, it will just, you can just retrieve it. So you don't have to do anything there. That means that it's a very agile, adaptive way of programming. You change something, you want to add a new property, you just add it in your UI, and that's it. You don't need to do anything on the backend to let the backend accept your new properties. So that's a very, and it's particularly interesting for mobile, because if you make a new app, version 1, you put it on all those stores, People are downloading it. You make a version 2, a version 3. You don't know anymore who's using which version. You cannot really tell the customers, the users, like, oh, you need to now update, because else it will not work. No, the old version has to work at the same time as a new version of your app. So that means your backend should just accept any of those calls. Of course, you will need to do some logic in your UI to know, okay, it could be that this data is not there because they're using another version. So I'm not saying that you can just, pretend that everything is on the same version, but you don't need to do anything on the backend to okay, they might come with other properties, or this property might be an array and it used to be a string. Well, on the backend, you don't have to do anything. It's just on the UI side that you could maybe test, okay, in this version it could be an array, in this version it could be a string. So I guess since it's the last session, you already have heard something about the document store, so I'm not going to repeat everything. But simply said, a document is a structure where you can just store information. Right now, we're using JSON to store stuff in a document, but in the future, it could be anything. It could be XML or whatever. Right now, it's JSON. If you have multiple documents, you will store them in one collection. It's like in SQL, it would be a table. Here, it's called a collection. And collections are, they need to be saved in the database. So database is just a handle for a lot of collections. If you're using REST, this is the kind of document that you would expect. So we have a header, which contains the two key values, document ID and document version, and then a content, which will contain the actual document that you're going to use. And in that content, you do whatever you want, as long as right now it's a valid JSON structure. The documents in a collection, they don't need to have the same structure. It's up to you to, well, to do something, to maybe, it's maybe a wise decision to put in one collection documents that are alike, but you don't have to. You can just store, the one document doesn't need to be the same structure as the next one. So you're just, it's up to you to store whatever you want there. Right now, we have some APIs already available to work with the document data model. So of course, Caché Object Script is the first thing that we did. So within Caché Object Script, you can create documents and do everything you want with it. We also have SQL, so you can use the documents in an SQL statement. You can even join tables and documents in one big query. So that's all available. But I'm not going to talk about all that. I'm only going to talk about the REST API in this session. Upcoming APIs will be Java.NET, Node.js. So the moment you want to really make a full stack application where you also want to run JavaScript on a server, then you will also need the Node.js. But I'm not going to talk about it right now because we only have 40 minutes. So REST with our document model. Who is already using REST with Caché right now? Okay, so if you're using REST right now, you need to well, create a web application, and there you have a dispatch class where you will have to use a REST handler, a class which will in fact route the REST calls to class methods, and they have to return JSON. Now, all that setup is already done for you here. So if you want to use REST with the document store, we have already done that. So if you install Caché 2016.2, the latest field test, you will just see in your web application that there is one for the document store. So you don't need to do anything there. And you will see there the URL you need to use, so the IP address and the port of your web server, and then /API/document/v1, and then the actual, the calls that I will describe you. So this is the URL to use. So there is full documentation of all that, so you can go to the documentation. In fact, the class present API document v1 contains also all the documentation of what calls you can use. But what I did for you is I'm using an open source tool called Swagger. That's a tool where you can just describe your calls and then you can test it, see what kind of parameters there are. So it's a very nice tool. I think the last slide of the presentation contains all the resources that I'm using, so you can get that definition file, download the Swagger, and just do the same thing as I'm going to demo right now. So I just described some of the calls that I'm using in this presentation, so to get a list of databases or collections in a database, delete a collection, etc. But let's just see this in live. Well, the first slide was PowerPoint. This is the real thing. You don't see a lot of difference. So maybe I have to. Okay, so the first call is /database to get a list of all the collections in a database. So let me show you that. So you see Swagger is not only, well, it's documentation, some examples, but you can also try it out. So that's really nice. You can, in fact, you can test all the calls, all the REST calls in this tool. So this is also a great way to test all your backend stuff before you do anything in the client side. So let me ask, for example, which are all the collections that exist in the user, or maybe I will use samples. So this will effectively do a get REST call to the document store. In fact, Swagger shows you also how to do the same thing in curl or in a browser. And this is the response. So these are one of the all the collections that are right now in samples. This is not really the list when you install Caché, because I already deleted some by accident and added some of them. But this is, in fact, if you install Caché, you will have already some collections like cities and countries that you can play with. Okay, so these are this is just the simplest one. Delete, I'm not going to do it right away. So let me just, well, create a new document. You don't have to create a collection. When you create a document in a collection, the collection automatically is created. So there is nothing on a collection that you need to define. So let me, well, let me just make a new document. So I will use an insert document in a collection. So I'm doing a post. So let me use samples and make up a collection. I have no idea if that collection exists. Maybe I should make sure that I take one that doesn't exist. So we start with an empty one. And the body of the call has to be your JSON document. So let me just create any valid document. So for example, something like this. If I make any typos, please tell me. So this is just a very simple JSON object with two key values, name and title. So I can then post it. And well, Swagger will also say how you should do that if you want to use curl. and here is the response. So I get a response back from the document model saying, okay, this is in fact my first document, so it gets ID of 1, and it's also a first version. So cool, it works. I can make another one. So what's your title then? Developer. Senior developer. Okay. I'm very sorry that I just called you a plain developer. Yeah, that's right. Not on wisdom. Okay. And now it's recorded for the humanities. So. Experience. Okay. I will update this in a moment. So okay, we have document ID 2. So let me just use this one. Returns all the documents to see if we really have now 2 documents. So anybody remembered how the collection was called? Oh, this is persons 1, 2, 3. Okay, so yeah, I will scroll it a little. So everybody can read this because maybe it's rather late to ask, but okay, so we have the collection persons 1, 2, 3. The size is 2. We have 2 documents, first document and the second one. So now in this case, I use exactly the same structure, but I don't have to. I can just put any document with complete other structure, but it will make your life as an application developer a little bit harder if you just store anything in one collection. So, but you can. We will not stop you doing that. So let me now, in fact, I have this document ID 2, and I have to update it because the title is completely wrong. So let me do, well, first get rid of this page. And then I'm going to do an update. So I'm going to use put as a REST method. I'm going to use samples. Oh, he already knows that. Okay. So I'm going to update my second document, and I'm just typing it. In fact, in a UI, you would first retrieve the document and then change some properties and then post it back. I'm not going to type everything again. So title is experienced. Ooh. I'm not an experienced typer, so developer, senior. You're okay with that, Dan? Okay. Okay, so I will also say verified true or 1 or whatever. I know you verified it, so this document really is not the same structure as the previous one, but it doesn't really matter. And now it says document version 3. So, well, and we can delete it, etc., etc. We can delete also one document. So there is also a set of APIs available to create indexes on collections. I'm not going to tell you all that. I didn't take the time to document them, but we will do all that. So basically, you can do everything with documents and collections through REST. So I hope you see that. Are there questions about this? In fact, yeah. That's a good question, and I don't know, but here's the guy that will tell us.
The version counter is collection-based.
Okay.
It's a little bit confusing, but that way we can tell the version of the collection as well as individual documents.
But you can also use your own version key if you just want to make sure, like my app has 5 versions and I want to test the document is from which of those 5 versions, then you can also use your own versioning. Okay, so if there are no questions, we will go for, you can still ask questions later. So, okay, so this is the REST API. Okay, the rest of the session is just some examples that I wrote to do exactly the same thing as we saw here, but nicer UI. So I wanted to show you two things. First of all, let's create a new application where you can decide how the documents will be structured. And secondly, I want to take an application, or let's say a small demo, that already exists. And I want to know if I take an application that maybe uses MongoDB or any other document-based database, how easy is it to change that to our document model? So to just know if we are, let's say, a bit doing it like the rest is. And I'm not going to use anything else than JavaScript. So what did I do to set up this demo? First of all, I installed Caché 2016.2 latest field test, or not the latest field test. And you could create a new namespace, but I just didn't bother and used user because I didn't want to do anything in Caché side. I'm just an ignorant JavaScript programmer that for the first time installed Caché. I clicked 5 times next, and that's the only thing I wanted to do. I'm using a web server, of course. I'm not using for my application the internal web server because as an ignorant JavaScript programmer, I have no idea that we install that. In any case, you have to use your own web server. So configure the web server. So in fact, the little detail that you need to do is you have to enable CORS in your web server. I'm not going to tell what CORS is. It's just if you're using from your UI, you're using another domain, you get the information from another domain, you have to get permission to do that from the web server. So you have to set this up. But in the examples that I have on the resource that I will tell you, I have an example of how to do that in IIS. So it's just a little file you have to put somewhere. And then I'm using this kind of REST calls, like I showed you, /API/documents v1, and then all the calls that I showed you in the Swagger tool. Okay. So the first example, well, I wanted to show you a little UI where you can list all of the documents and you can click on one and edit and delete. It's a simple example. But to do that, I need some data. We can, of course, create some data, but we don't have the time. So I said, okay, let me search somewhere on the web a source where I can import a lot of JSON documents and then use those as an example. And to have a little bit of fun, I used the Marvel Superheroes developer website where you can download all kinds of superheroes in JSON. So what you have to do, you have to go to developer.marvel.com and then create an account. You get a private and a public key, and then you can, well, get some data from it. So the goal is, I go to that, I used the get method to get a bunch of superhero characters, and I just store them in the document data model. And then I use all the superheroes in my model to do updates and deletes, etc. So basically, my import program is just to get to use the call here. This is the API to get some superheroes from Marvel, and then, in fact, one by one, storing them in the collection superheroes in our document data model. So that's my import module. But first, very interesting, maybe you've seen already some superheroes on TV. Well, this is really how they look like in JSON. But I really don't care because I'm going to import them in the document store and I'm just going to post them. I don't really care what's in there. Well, I do care about 2 fields. Oops, sorry. I do care about name and description because I want to show that in my UI. But for the rest, you see a lot of other stuff, arrays with comics and series, etc. I just want to store them. I'm not going to bother doing anything with that. But that's the beauty of the document data model. You can just accept whatever you receive and just store it. So, well, instead of showing it in PowerPoint, I want to show you this live. So now I hope that I have internet. Okay. So there is one superhero that's not in the Marvel store, that's Captain Caché. If you're old enough, you remember him. If you do not remember him, we have, in fact, a little printed comic about Captain Caché. You can always mail me to get it. So in my UI, I have here the list of all the superheroes, and there are not really a lot of them because I still have to import them. So in fact, my superhero collection now, it just doesn't exist in Caché. So I need to get some data from the Marvel API, and that's in this screen, where in fact I'm using, well, you don't see it really, but it's v1 public characters. That's the REST API to get superheroes from Marvel. You have to give 2 parameters from which hero you want to start and how many do you want to download. And then I just, well, call the REST, do the REST call and store them in the document model. Since the internet is not really great, I'm going to only import 10 of them. And normally now, well, this is in fact what I receive. I just display it to show you, but I don't really care. I do not actually receive the GIF files, but just the URL. So I'm not going to store the images, but just the URLs in the document store. But I just wanted to show you that some real ugly superheroes. So they should be now in my screen. So these are the ones. Okay. So this is just one REST. Well, I will show you the code in a minute. I will. So in fact, to retrieve the list of the superheroes, I'm just using one of the calls, which is in fact a post of database collection, and then action is query. In fact, this call is doing under the hood an SQL query. And because it's doing an SQL query, in the body you need to say which are the columns that you want to get back here, but if you don't give anything, it will return everything. And also the restriction, which is in fact the where clause of the SQL that's going to be executed. You can say how many you want or the maximum, and then you will get an array of all the documents. I will also show you the code to really do updates and reads and creates on one instance, on one document. And this is in fact this API I'm using. So instead of showing it in PowerPoint, let me show that in code. So I'm not using the Studio, I'm not using Atelier because I'm an ignorant JavaScript programmer. I don't know anything about Caché, so I just use brackets or any other notepad to edit my files. So this is, well, I'm using Angular as the UI front end. You don't have to use Angular, of course. You can use any JavaScript framework or just plain HTML and jQuery or whatever. I mean, this really doesn't matter. So you see here this is my import. You see that I have one module that will do the API call to get the characters from Marvel, and one which will do, in fact, the update, the post to our document data model with the database collection. So let me just show you the code in full. So in fact, I'm calling that, so I'm doing one call with the limit and an offset that the UI was asking me. And for each of the elements that I receive, I'm doing an update in the document data model. That's my import. So just one REST call to get, and for each superhero, a post to the document data model. And then if you want to see the code to get a list of the characters, in fact, I'm using this query with this, what you saw on the PowerPoint, so the limited columns and the restriction. And in fact, I'm just calling this code. So I'm just calling this code to one call to the document model, and I will put all the content of my JSON that I receive into, well, the variable characters. And if you insist, I can also show you the HTML that will repeat in that characters. So here you see characters, and for each entry of that, it will show you the name, the description, and the image to that character. And I'm always using, well, character.content, because my document always, my date is always in the content part of my document. So .name and .description are the two properties I'm using. So I'm not expecting you to understand all this. This is really the experienced JavaScript programmer that needs to do that. But this is how we make that work. So I will not show you the rest of the code. All that code is available, so you can just look at it. I can now do an edit, do some editing, and save it, and it's saved like that. So it's working like that. You can do a new one or a delete. That all work. Now I want to show some interesting stuff. So that we all did. So what happens if I want to add some new properties? Because we saw only the name and the description of a superhero. The most important key property of the superhero was not there. And what's the most important property of a superhero? Does he have a cape or not? That's really the most important, and it was not there. So I want to add it in my UI. It was not in the original data from Marvel. It's just incredible that they didn't do that there. So I want to add it, maybe also some superpowers. That's not really interesting, but I want to also be able to insert that. So let me do that in the code. And of course, because I don't really want to write some code, I'm going to just comment out something, which is a bit of cheating, but okay. So I just comment out these few lines, and I can maybe make this a little bit. So here I have two, in fact, I have a text box and a checkbox. And if you really don't believe me that I didn't cheat, well, because it's Angular, this is the content.has a cape is the key that's going to be used in my document. So if you think that I will cheat, just say any name, I will add it to this senior developer maybe, or extra info, whatever, maybe I can say senior.extra. So you can, well, it doesn't really matter. I just want to say this is how it has to be stored in my document. I can do the same thing with the superpowers, whatever. Okay, so let me save it, and now I go back to my UI. I do a refresh. And what happens to me all the time, and it happens here as well, I don't see the new properties because Chrome cached it and cached my previous version, so I need to clear my cache, which is not too difficult to do. So now it should give me, yeah, my two new properties. So what is the superpower? Well, I just deleted all the descriptions, so I have no idea what he is capable of. So let's say he's a JavaScript programmer. Maybe I should put senior. And, well, he has a cape, because all superheroes need to have a cape. That's really what I... So, yeah, only experience. So, do you have a cape? No. Okay. Okay, so let me go to Swagger and see if it really stored something in my collection. So let me use the get. Samples, no, I'm using user, I'm using superheroes. And where are they? Here are my superheroes. Instead of finding the new property, I'm just doing cape. So you see already here, it only finds one occurrence of the word cape, so there's only one document that has cape, and you see it found well, it stored whatever I put, so senior.extrainfo. Has a cape, true, and, well, whatever as, so it just stores it like that. And all my other superheroes don't have those new properties. That is not really important for, but, well, the document store just accepts anything as long as it's valid JSON for now. So cool, that works. And, well, I only did something in the UI. I never went to Caché and do something there. So that's really cool. It's real agile. So we have done that. Okay, so I have 8 minutes to do my second example. So the second example, I just wanted to take an existing application, in this case a little one, and migrate it to the document data model. So my big question was, apart from changing the APIs, the REST APIs, do I have to change anything else? Well, let's find out. So this is the URL that I found. It was a nice article if you want to know anything on Angular, for example, how to build a simple application in Angular. That was the article, and they explain how to build it. And I said, okay, well, let me take this application, which works on the New York Times API, so it uses the data in the New York Times to get books, bestsellers, and show the books. I said, well, let me take that demo and just change it. I will import all the books into Caché, and let me see what I have to do to make that work. So maybe I can show you how that works originally. So this is the one, if my internet works. Yep. So maybe I have to, okay. So these are all the genres of books. And you can see, or maybe you don't anymore, that they are dated till April 17, because I did a call right now, so I got all the bestsellers from this week. I can just take a category and then take a book, and then normally, I get information about the book. So this is really the application that, or the demo that exists. It uses nothing in Caché. It's using the New York Times, well, API, whatever, however they store it. And now I show you the one that I am using in the document data model. And, well, you can see already here, I only have dates till February. That's the day that I imported all the books. So it's not using New York Times anymore, it's using the document data model. Oops, too small. So I can click on one, and then it's the same thing. So first, it works. Now, what did I do to change it so that the original application worked in the document model? Well, first of all, I had to change the APIs, of course. Instead of going to the New York Times to do the calls in the REST there, I needed to change them to our document model. So I created a new namespace, and I called it the genres. I called New York Times genres, and in one another collection for each genre, I store all the books. So I needed to change the API. That's fair enough. I mean, we will expect that. But it didn't work after that. So I needed to do something else. And why was that? Because apparently the documents that are stored in the New York Times database, they're like that. They just, each document has key, list name, display name, etc. And from our document data model, we have this extra content key. So this was a change, and I just had to add content in my JavaScript, and that was it. That was the thing I needed to change. So I'm not going to show you all the code. That are a few slides, but we have only 4 minutes. You just have to believe me. Well, you don't have to believe me. Well, what you can do, well, first of all, my conclusion was, yes, I can create new applications just using JavaScript. You don't need anything else. And I can use existing applications and just move them to Caché. That's not a big deal. So if you don't believe me, you can get the code from the original blog, and you can get the code that I changed and do a diff, and then you know for sure what I did to change it. So you can get all the code from GitHub. We also now have a GitHub for InterSystems Summit 2016, where you find the same information. Okay, before questions, well, maybe it's too late to link you to all the learning sessions that we have, but at least we also have the community. So from tomorrow, we start a new global summit, and that's called the Developer Community, which is 365 days of global summit. So you can go there for more information, or haunt me or the product manager, Stefan Wittmann, if you want to know more about REST. But let's say the last minutes you can use to ask any questions. Was it so clear, or do you want to go to the pool? I think both. Okay, well, you can still find me maybe at the pool, ask me questions, or use any other resources. So I thank you for your attention.